Hey, welcome into the REVO Church Podcast. I'm Jamie. I'm the host of the podcast, and this is episode 2 of Spiritual Disciplines. Last week, we detailed what spiritual disciplines are. We talked about the fact that they are meant to be tools that move us from people that are seeking the milk of the gospel to people that are eating the meat of the gospel. So we talked all about this idea of spiritual disciplines. Well, today we are talking about Bible reading. And as you can tell, I'm not alone. I brought along a friend. Friend, you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, they don't want to hear much from me. So I'm Matthew, the campus pastor up at the North Campus. I love Bible reading, so I'm ready to dive straight in. So they didn't come to listen to me, that's for sure.
I like how I said I just brought a friend.
Yeah, yep.
So when we are talking about Bible reading, it was the natural first spiritual discipline I wanted to hit. Because I think when we think about Bible reading, it's like the launching off point of everything else. If we're trying to grow closer to God, it's the thing that tells us who that God is, because we can't know him without his word, and he reveals it. And when we're thinking about spiritual disciplines and Bible reading, one verse came in my mind, and it was Psalm 119, 105. It's the only verse people know from Psalm 119.
Yeah, most people know this one.
But here's what it is. It says, "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path." That the Bible, God's word, is meant to be a light for the path that we're walking. It's meant to be the lamp in the darkness of the world that's we can use to lead and guide ourselves as we are trying to go about all of life. And so when I was thinking about the title of Bible reading, I almost wanted to change it, but if I would have changed it, people would have looked at it and been like, I don't know what that means. I ain't clicking on it.
Yep.
But when I think about Bible reading, I think it's more of a Bible saturation,
Right.
not a Bible reading. Because Bible saturation is so much more than just reading the Bible. What do you think about Bible saturation?
I've heard it talked about too as Bible intake, which is like ways that you take in the Bible. It's kind of the same idea of milk and meat, and that it's something that we're wanting to bring into our lives, something we're wanting to have saturate, to use your word, our souls, our hearts, our minds. And so the way that we view the world, the way that we look at the world, all of the world, all of life, impacted by who God says that he is through the Bible. And like you said, I think it is probably the most important, because all the other spiritual disciplines, where do we get them from? The Bible. You know, like
they
anytime somebody
out.
wants to talk about prayer or worship or serving, they say, well, let me show you from the Bible where we get this. So, you know, like this is kind of the foundation for all of that. So yeah, I agree. I think it is really important.
And I think when we talk Bible saturation, reading the Bible is important. This episode's titled Bible Reading, because we're encouraging you to read it. But Bible saturation is so much more than just reading the Bible. It's listening to the music. Is the music you're listening to seeking and honoring God? It is the podcast. If you are a podcast listener, are the podcasts pulling you closer to Jesus?
If they're listening, they're a podcast listener.
You are a podcast listener.
Yep, that is true.
It's the music and the movies and the TV and the books that you read, the people you hang around with.
Yeah, you can even listen to the Bible, like audio Bibles.
Exactly.
And you can take in, saturate your life with the Bible in so many ways.
And so when we're saying Bible saturation, we're saying your entire life should be fully being filled by the word, by God, where then you can live out what Psalm 119, 105 is saying, where you can walk and you know that you have a light because you are saturated in the word. And the word becomes the light that we are seeking.
Yeah, it's kind of a constant focus on Jesus and on the word.
Exactly. So the first question, the first natural question that people are probably wondering is, if we're talking Bible reading and we're saying it's important, how do you personally make Bible reading a priority?
First fruits, I think, is a big thing. Giving first of what you've got. I think that's a really important key thing. It's something that's taught all throughout the Bible. Once again, going back to that, all throughout the Bible and in all different areas of our life. So not just the Bible about the Bible, but the Bible about money or about your time and all these things is giving God the first fruits, but also the best of what you've got. And the best, oftentimes for me, the first is the morning, and the best is in the morning. I've made myself. I used to love to sleep, but I've made myself do it in the morning because I found if I don't do it in the morning, it doesn't happen. So that's me, but other people are different. I know that. I know we've talked about that before with you. You're different. You do it at a different time. And so that doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that it's the different person giving God what their best time is. I think that's a good way to think about it.
I like the idea of giving God your best time. because as much as I want to be a morning person, I think
A
everybody,
lot of people would love that.
a lot of people would love to claim they're morning people.
Right.
I'm not a morning person. I am a solid mid-morning to mid-afternoon person. Like 9:30 to about 2:30 is my peak time.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, if I was going to wake up in the morning, I know we talk about Pastor Josh.
Right.
It's weird to say Pastor Josh.
Yeah, because he's just Josh.
He's just Josh to us,
Yep.
but Pastor Josh, the mission pastor at REVO, he is really big and diligent about waking up early and getting in the Word. I believe he wakes up around like 5 a.m., 4:30 in the morning, and the first thing he does is get in the Word.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about that because he wants to do it before his kids wake up, before Amy wakes up. Here's the deal. If I was going to wake up at 5 a.m., God would be getting 5%.
Yeah.
Because
You'd be getting your worst, not your best.
He'd be getting my worst because I would open up the Bible, I would start to read it, my eyes would close, and I would be out. And so what I've found, and this is for me personally, if I want to give God my best and I want to read the Word, I found that I do that best when it's at lunchtime.
Yep.
I know I'm kind of privileged. Like I tend to work on my own, work in an office. But for me, whenever it's lunchtime, I'll sit down and I will open the Word and I will start to read. And so I will be being filled with the Word while also being filled with hopefully some good food. It depends on whatever I cook. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good.
Right. Sometimes just like whatever I can get my hands on. So,
But I like the idea of saying giving God your best. And that doesn't always mean morning. That means your best.
Right.
But what do you think? Like, what are some other ways that you can make it a priority?
I think if you make God the goal of what you're doing, that's a big key. Make joy in God, who God is, the goal of reading the Bible. Because like you started with, the Bible is how we know God.
Yep.
We would not know who God is without the Bible.
I like that.
We could get hints of there's something out there that created all of this, but we wouldn't know who. We wouldn't know what. Is it a thing? Is it a person? Like, all these sorts of questions. But the Bible is how God reveals himself. And so if some way that we're thinking, well, how can I do this? How can I make it important? How can I prioritize it? Make God the goal of it, because God is the goal of the Bible anyways.
Yep.
When God wrote it, it wasn't to be a rule book or something. It was so that his people could know him. And so to make God the goal and joy in God the goal of your time, I think is a big key factor into getting yourself to do it, because if you love it, you'll do it. You'll make time for it. I think that's why a lot of people don't read it in the morning, is because, and they say they're not morning people when they just haven't tried. Like, obviously you've tried and found out like, hey, it didn't work. And that's great. But a lot of people they love sleep more than they love God. Now they don't say that.
Yeah,
but
you'll never catch somebody saying
right. But I mean, it's pretty apparent from their life, like that they love sleep more than they love God, and they're unwilling to give up that time in the morning because they hit snooze 8 times. And it's like, well, if you love sleep so much, just sleep the extra 40 minutes, instead of having get woken up every 10, that you have to hit snooze or whatever.
Get that full rest.
And so what I think that's a really big factor is let's think about, is God the goal of this, or am I just trying to get something from God that's like, am I trying to get guidance or wisdom or all these things that come from reading the Bible that are good, but God should be the number one goal, who he is. Having that love, that joy in him, I think is the number one goal.
I think that's a very good key. It was something that last time when I talked about the intro to spiritual disciplines, I talked about how spiritual disciplines are great tools, but they're terrible masters.
You can tell I listened to that. I listened to that one already.
And so when we're thinking about it in that lens, if all you're doing in Bible reading is reading to check off that you read your Bible, you're not going to get anything out of it.
Right.
You're essentially wasting your time. You're like the person that hits the snooze 100 times, when in reality, they could have just set their alarm 30 minutes later and been more rested.
We're making some people mad with that.
We're making
I know.
Someone is going to drop a comment and be
sure.
like, how dare y'all call me out?
That's okay.
We're like, listen, we didn't know it was you.
Yeah.
Now we do.
Yeah.
But I think about that because I think if we are just simply trying to check off the box of I read this, then we're getting nothing out of it.
Right.
We're essentially wasting our time. And so that makes me think, you're a morning Bible reader. I'm more an afternoon Bible reader because that's when I can give God my best. But another frequent question about Bible reading is, where do I start? Or how do I get involved? I want to get connected with God. I want to start reading, but I don't know where to start. I don't know if you get those questions. I've got those questions. So for you personally, like, how do you read the Bible?
I mean, I think you go back to the goal, right? Like it really depends on the goal of what you're doing. Is if the goal is God, not a book, because like you said, it's a terrible master, but a great tool. Like the goal is not a book, the goal is God. And so if God is the goal, joy in God is the goal, then that's going to form the way that you do it as well. Not just what you do, but also how you do it. And so I think part of that comes from thinking about how can I read this and formulate my time, plan my time such that I'm asking God the whole time with the whole purpose being, I want to see you, know you, love you. Not just increase what I know about God, but also increase my love for the God that I'm learning about. And so that kind of idea of, well, okay, ask yourself the question, like, why am I doing it? And then what am I hoping the result is going to be? And I think that starts with a good plan, at least for me. I know people are different. You know, we talk about that with waking up early versus not. People are different, and that's okay. I love a good plan because if I don't have a plan, I will just end up sitting there and 5 minutes of Bible reading goes by. And the next thing I know, 45 minutes of scrolling social media, checking emails, thinking about what the next week's sermon is going to be, like all that, which is not bad stuff, but it has taken the spot that I've allotted for God. And so having that plan, exactly,
is no longer given to God. Your first fruits is now becoming, what does Matthew want with my first fruits?
It's really easy to allow the time you set aside for, and this is the case with anything, work and kids and family and other hobbies. Like I've scheduled this time for this thing, but if you don't plan what you're going to do when you're there, then you will eventually end up using that scheduled time for something else that's more urgent, rather than the really important thing.
I've heard people say, failure to plan is planning to fail.
Yeah, it's very true in Bible reading, that's for sure.
And when I was younger and I heard people say that, I always thought like, man, y'all just making that up. And then especially like Bible reading, I've realized that if I don't have a plan for what I'm reading, that knocks me off a peg. One plan, there's been a bunch of different ways I've read the Bible. There's been times where I've opened the word and I've prayed and I'm like, God, I'm flipping and just show me something. The old
Bible roulette.
Play and flip.
Yeah, just see what God has for you.
What is God showing me today?
And it ends up in some weird Old Testament prophet, and you're like, dang it, I don't know what this is about.
Book of Joel, chapter 2. What does that have to do with me?
Right. And it does, but when you're 21 trying to figure that out, it's like, good luck.
No idea. And so what I've found for me is I like a good Bible plan. I like the idea of not so much the plan and I'm doing this plan so I can check it off, but I like a good Bible plan that'll help me stay focused and stay on track as far as reading. One plan that I've used a couple different times, it's almost a free plan. It's not free because you have to own the Bible.
Oh, okay.
But if you own the Bible, it's almost a free plan. If you have an ESV Bible, in the back of the ESV Bible, most ESV Bibles, at least my ESV Bible, if you don't have my version of the ESV,
people are going to fact check you and be like, that's wrong.
It's not in my ESV. But in my ESV, there's a Bible through the year plan, where in that it's each day it's saying you can read this passage, you can read this passage. Matthew's fact checking me in the video to see if it's there. Go. In my version, it has a Bible in the year plan. It might be in the back. It might be in the front. Hopefully it's in his.
Yeah, it's not looking so good, but this is also just a standard Bible, whereas like
standard.
It doesn't have any notes, nothing. So
let's see.
I know you can find that plan online.
You can find it online.
I have seen that. So,
but I like that plan because what it does is it breaks it down, saying, "Hey, you're going to read some in the Old Testament." I lied. It says you're going to read some in the Old Testament, some in the New Testament, and you're going to read a Psalm. And then when you finish Psalms, you read the Proverbs.
Oh, okay.
And so I like that plan because it gives you a little bit of old, a little bit of new, and the Psalm. And so it really tries to keep you grounded while also not being so rigid in that if you miss days, you're not like, oh man, I'm dead. Yeah,
now I'm dead in the water, can't catch up. There's one similar to that I do called the Discipleship Journal reading plan. I know it's a horrible title. Doesn't have anything really to do with discipleship, or there's no journal that goes along with it. So I don't know. Navigators is the company. Explain that one to me, but doesn't matter. It's still a great reading plan because it starts with month 1, not January. So you can pick it up in June if you want to, and it breaks it up like that: Old Testament, New Testament.
You can pick it up in April.
Yeah, because it is April right now. It is April 9th, is when this video is going to air. So bang, bang. There you go. Do it on April 9th. And you got month 1, day 1, provides you with 5 days at the end of the month to catch up. So like each month is only, I think, 25, 26 days, something like that. So it gives you, you forgot or you didn't have time or something crazy happened. Hey, you got days to make it up. But it breaks it up in different Old Testament, New Testament, passage in the Psalms and a passage in the Gospels. And then that way, as you're going through it, you can, the way I formulate my time when I'm using that plan is I'm reading until God stops me. What I mean by that is I'm just asking God, where do you want me to stop? Where do you want me to study? Have something stick out to me, pique my interest with something, have a question come up in my mind as I read over one of the passages, and then I'll just stop and spend as much time there as I can. And if that uses the entire time that I've allotted, great. That's what God had for me. And if not, and I continue on, great.
It works.
It's fine. It allows the freedom to, I'm not trying to, like you said, check the box to get today's reading done. I'm trying to meet God. And so if God wants to meet me in the first 2 verses that I'm supposed to read and nothing else, that's great. That's what I want. Because God's the goal, not reading the Bible.
Exactly. And hey, if you're still questioning, like, I don't have a plan, if you're like Matthew and your ESV doesn't have that study plan, or you've already forgot the plan that Matthew was saying.
Because of the long name. Because of the long name. Remember it, yeah.
One thing we've done, if you come to REVO, is we have the book of Acts.
Right.
That we're going through the book of Acts all through from chapter 1 was this past Sunday, all the way through to chapter 28. And we're doing a reading plan through the entire book of Acts, where we have the little sheet where it says, this week you're going to read these verses. This week you're going to read these verses. So even if if your ESV Bible is not like mine and you don't have that plan, or you don't remember Matthew's, or you're like, I'm just hard up, like money's not something I want to spend right now.
Yeah.
We have that available.
Tons of free options online.
We can do that.
Too,
You can go online and say like Bible reading plan, Chat GPT, and say, Chat GPT, I want to read the Bible in a year, and it'll make you a plan.
Yeah, I bet it would.
I don't know if it would be a good plan.
Might include the Apocrypha in there. You might have to be specific. You want the Protestant
you might have to be like,
Bible.
whoa. Yeah. But that's even an option. So as we're about to close out, I'd love to ask you, what's some advice you would give to someone that wants to start reading the Bible? Because I think we hear about Bible reading, and it sounds like such a good thing. Like, I want to read the Bible. And maybe even people start out reading it, and then they start to just tamper off because it gets difficult. It's not as easy as they once thought it would be. The first fruits, it gets tired to always give your best. Like, what's some advice you might give to someone that says, I want to start reading the Bible?
Right. Yeah. I'm thinking, first, have God as the goal. We've mentioned that a few times. And it is that important. Have God as the goal.
Yes.
Have that be the number one reason that you're doing what you're doing, to experience and to know and to love God more. That for sure. I think also start small. Like, it's okay if you've never done it before, if you've never had a regimented plan, if you've never been very routine about it, just start with 10 minutes. Like, a lot of people think like, man, I want to be like those people who spend an hour every day reading the Bible and an extra hour in prayer. It's like, yeah, good luck blocking 2 hours of your time out when you've never done that before. Like, if you can, wonderful. Like, please let me know how you did it. But why not just start with 10 minutes? Start small, and be okay to not see massive, rapid growth. Like, be okay to have that start really small and to grow really slowly, and for it to be something that in 20 years' time, you'll look back and you can see all the growth, but in 20 days' time, you won't be able to look back and see a bunch of growth, and it takes time. So I think about things like that. Having a plan is important. Once you've got the time planned out, fight for that time.
Yes.
People that are wanting to do it in the morning, the way I heard this, and it really changed the way I read in the morning, is to think that my morning starts the night before.
I like that.
And so if I'm going to get up in the morning, that's the time I'm choosing. That's the best. That's my first, all that sort of stuff. Then I've got to guard my nights and be very intentional about making sure that I'm not staying up till midnight, doing random stuff. And then I got to wake up early, and then I don't want to, and it just makes it harder, right? And so plan your nights. Prayer is a big key part of Bible reading, and asking God to make you love the time, make you love him more so that you enjoy it, so it becomes something you love. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I guess last practical tip, very practical thing I could say is, don't just pick up and buy or find one and it's been sitting around your house gathering dust. Don't just pick up any Bible reading plan or Bible study book where someone has written this to help you. Make sure that what you're doing is reading the Bible, not reading someone else's experience with God in the Bible. That not because those are bad; those can be really great tools and assets and resources. But if our goal is experiencing God in the Bible, then the Bible studies we pick up should be filled with read this passage, then read this passage. Here's all the Bible text. And if you're reading more of an author's words than the Bible, that's a problem.
That's a red flag.
If the questions are like a quiz type, like what did Moses say to Aaron in verse 23? And it's like, okay, that's what he said. Then that's another red flag. Like, you're not trying to just regurgitate information. You're trying to say, what does Moses say to Aaron in verse 23? And then the next question should be, and what does that teach you about God? It's not a quiz question. It's just let's think this through, think deeply. So yeah, there's millions more I'm sure I could go through, but those are some initial things that come to my head.
If I was going to give 2 tips, my first tip would be very simply this: start small. Like you said, start small. We oftentimes want to think about we need to read for an hour every day.
Right.
And yeah, we probably do need to read an hour every day. But before you ever get to an hour, get the 5 minutes.
Right.
Get the 10 minutes where you're just giving your best to God for 10 minutes.
Go all in for that time.
All in for that small time. And then the second thing is don't give up. Because I think when you read the Bible, like you said, you need to fight for that time. Schedule it out, fight for that time, be very specific, and then don't give up, because you're going to start reading and it might be day 20, it might be day 30, and you still haven't gotten anything out of it. Don't give up, because it starts small. Jesus said that the faith the size of a mustard seed will move mountains.
Right.
A mustard seed's small.
Very tiny.
And so you need to start small. You need to start where you can continually do it, and then don't give up. And when you start to do those 2 things, when you're actively reading the Bible, I believe that's when we will start to experience God. But I'm so glad you guys joined us. This has been the REVO Church Podcast. We've talked all about Bible reading. Make sure you, all the stuff, like, subscribe, any of that cheesy YouTube stuff. But, join us next week. We're going to be talking about not Bible reading, but Bible studying. See you guys.